Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. This week we have the continuation of last week's interview with Roger and Cher Christie, a couple of activists who've been based in Hilo, Hawaii for more than 30 years and went through a pretty traumatic incident that we talked about on the show here. We have our Hip News segment that's about to come up. We want to remind you that if you or a loved one have any need for a medical marijuana permit anywhere in the United States, then we have a referral service. Just give us a call and we'll be happy to find a doctor in your area who can help. Call us at 503-235-4606. Again, that's 503-235-4606. Without further ado, we'll bring on our infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves.
I feel the force.
First story tonight is from Trenton, New Jersey. Members of New Jersey State Assembly and Senate have advanced legislation to the governor legalizing the possession, production, and retail sale of marijuana to adults. Lawmakers approved the measure weeks after voters decided in favor of Public Question 1 back on Election Day, November 3rd, which instructed the legislature to regulate the adult-use cannabis market. Lawmakers advanced a series of bills to Democratic Governor Phil Murphy. Senate Bill 21, Assembly Bill 21 establishes rules for licensing commercial cannabis producers and retailers. Under the measure, adults will be able to legally purchase up to 1 ounce of cannabis from state licensed retailers. Retail sales will be subject to a state sales tax, and 70% of the sales tax revenue will be initially earmarked toward designated communities. For the first 2 years, the number of state licensed cultivators will be capped at 37. Existing state licensed medical cannabis producers will be among those eligible to provide for the retail market. Separate legislation, Senate Bill 2535 and New Jersey's Assembly Bill 1897 removes criminal and civil penalties for the private possession of up to 6 ounces of cannabis by those ages 21 and older, as well as the possession of personal use amounts of hashish, up to 170 grams of hash. The measure also restricts police from conducting a search solely on the basis of the odor of cannabis. Historically, New Jersey police have placed significant emphasis on marijuana law enforcement. An analysis of nationwide arrest data published in 2018 reported that New Jersey was third in the nation in the total marijuana arrests and second only to Wyoming in per capita marijuana arrests. Lawmakers should be commended for working quickly to implement the will of the voters who made their mandate clear at the ballot box. While these measures are not perfect and our work is far from finished, it's a crucial step toward repairing the decades of damage done to New Jersey's most vulnerable communities as a result of the enforcement of marijuana prohibition. Going forward, tens and thousands of otherwise law-abiding New Jersey citizens will no longer be subject to arrest, incarceration, and a criminal record for their personal use of marijuana, and that's a reason to celebrate. Next story is from New Zealand. Cannabis use mitigates symptoms of endometriosis, according to survey data published in the Journal of Women's Health. Endometriosis is estimated to impact more than 10% of women of reproductive age and is typically associated with pelvic pain and cramping. An international team of researchers surveyed a subset of self-identified medical cannabis consumers in New Zealand with either endometriosis or polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. Herbal cannabis use was not legally permitted for medicinal purposes in New Zealand at the time the survey was conducted. Respondents were most likely to report using cannabis for pain relief, improving sleep, and mitigating nausea. The respondents reported a median score of 90% on a 0 to 100 point scale in response to the question, how does cannabis affect your conditions or symptoms overall, where 0 was no relief and 100 was excellent relief. Nearly 6 in 10 respondents acknowledged being able to cease their use of at least one prescription medication following the initiation of cannabis. Study participants were most likely to report stopping their use of opioids, a finding that's consistent with dozens of other studies. Separate survey data of U.S. women previously reported that more than 20% of subjects with pelvic pain consume cannabis products, with 96% of consumers reporting symptom improvement. The authors of the latest cannabis study concluded, quote, cannabis, most commonly inhaled via pipe, joint, or bong, was considered by our respondents with endometriosis and or PCOS to be a very effective substance for the management of their symptoms, especially in regard to pain, sleep, and gastrointestinal symptoms. The respondents reported clear evidence of a substitution effect where the use of cannabis reduced or replaced other pharmaceutical medications, especially with respect to opioid-based analgesics, and also to other medications commonly used in the management of endometriosis-related symptoms, such as antidepressants and benzodiazepines. Self-reported community data such as these add to the growing body of evidence that medicinal cannabis may be a potentially effective part of a multidisciplinary toolkit to manage the symptoms of endometriosis and support reduction of other classes of medication, including opioids, end quote. The full text of this study, Illicit Cannabis Use as a Management Strategy in New Zealand, Women with Endometriosis, appears in the Journal of Women's Health. Our last story tonight is from Hamburg, Germany. Nearly 1 in 10 patients with Parkinson's disease report using cannabis products to alleviate Parkinson's disease-related symptoms, according to a survey of German patients published in the Journal of Parkinson's Disease. Medical cannabis products have been approved in Germany since 2017 for the treatment of severe symptoms of Parkinson's disease. A team of investigators affiliated with the University of Hamburg conducted a nationwide survey among members of the German Parkinson's Association. Over 1,300 patients responded to the survey. The researchers described the study as the largest ever undertaken to assess Parkinson's disease patients' perceptions regarding the use of cannabis. Just under 9% of the survey respondents acknowledged using products containing either THC or CBD or both to mitigate the symptoms of the disease. Over half of the respondents, 54%, reported clinical benefit due to their consumption of cannabis products. Patients were most likely to report that marijuana-based products relieve pain, depression, stiffness, and improve sleep. Respondents were likely to report benefits from products containing THC more than those consisting of CBD only. The authors concluded, quote, our study offers insight into the Parkinson's disease community perceptions of medical cannabis and shows that cannabis is applied in almost 10% of patients against motor and non-motor symptoms. The results suggest that medical cannabis might be helpful for selected Parkinson's disease patients with insufficient symptom relief despite their usual anti-Parkinson medication, end quote. That's the end of our hemp news segment for tonight. Again, if you or a loved one need to find a doctor who can help you get medical marijuana recommendation for your state anywhere in the United States, then you can call our office at 503-235-4606. Now we're going back to this interview with Roger and Cher Christie.
Cher, when did you and Roger first get together?
Well, I had met Roger the first week I was here in Hawaii in 2000. But it just wasn't that time, you know, it just, so we had seen each other a couple different times through the years. He had seen me in a bathing suit with a wheelbarrow when I worked at a beautiful property called Shangri-La that since the lava has taken the whole area of Kapoho. Yeah. And then I had seen, and he got my card which said Aspen on it the first week, and that's both of one of our favorite places on the planet.
Yeah, and he's from Colorado. So were you from Colorado as well?
No, but I had spent a lot of time in Colorado. I lived in Vail at one point, skiing, and Boulder was one of my favorite places, and did some work there, feng shui jobs and things there. But it was, and then I saw Roger probably about 2004, and he was with another woman, and I was at a party, and he was so attentive like he is now. He just holds, you know, he's always opening the doors, and I just went, I want a man that treats me like he treats this woman. And so that was planted. And then in 2008 or 2007, our neighbors got arrested, and there was a fundraising for them, for
It was just
cannabis.
a marijuana arrest.
It was a marijuana arrest, Grey Wolf and Devaki, and there was a beautiful event. And I donated. I was doing water shiatsu, Japanese massage in the warm ponds, and I donated a couple of treatments. And I heard Roger speak, and I just remember a long time ago that this comment that in general wouldn't so much apply to today's world, but that women hear and men see. And I just, when I heard him speak, I went, oh my gosh. I was just so taken by what he had to say, expressing about tree of life. And here I was with somebody that had grown underground. And I thought, geez, they've never told me anything about hemp and the tree of life and all these things. And, and make money off of the cannabis, but really not keeping their truth. So I was just, just really taken. And at that time, I had had pneumonia, and I needed to get out of the rainforest. So I was looking for a room or something in Hilo, and I had been working on some projects that I wanted to finish in the wintertime. My farm at that time, it wasn't quite, I didn't have a fireplace and all these things. And became roommates. Um, and I had come to the ministry, and I loved it, but I thought I was a feng shui practitioner. I went, oh, this place needs some help.
Get some more.
And anyway, we eventually, months later, became lovers, and I just totally fell in love with Roger, and started to get involved more with the ministry, just organizing and taking care of things, and just made so much sense. I've been an herbologist. I spent a lot of time with plants. I had a biodynamic farm in Canada and had a farm here and I just thought that it just made so much sense. Hemp and the cannabis plant and all the wonderful things that it could do. And
And it wasn't that risky at that time because I had the legitimacy of the ministry. So, most people dealing with cannabis, it's an underground winky wink secret thing back for decades. And it was dangerous and forbidden in so many ways and could really hurt people.
Yeah.
But here I was, as a matter of fact, I was gifted that Moses building space.
the big sign.
To start with. And it was on the busiest intersection on the island. And the famous old Moses building, oceanfront. I mean, it was absolutely spectacular. And I just kept renting more spaces in it. And the police told me I had immunity from prosecution as long as I kept it private and religious. And the DEA officer in town, agent, told me we were good to go. The U.S. attorney told me, keep going, no problem whatsoever. The local mayor, the local prosecutor.
When did the U.S. attorney tell you that? What year was that? When did they tell you that?
That in 2002, 2004. Yeah, it was a known thing. So I didn't feel I was risking.
Right.
But I thought, I've got this ultimate legitimacy from the state because the state is the government authority that licenses people to marry. The federal doesn't do that. So if you have state legitimacy to do that, you have federal legitimacy. And the feds.
How many people have you married?
About 60 couples.
So let's go forward to the marriage that happened just before everything crashed. You had a marriage that you done, and then the next day you became one of, what do they call it, the Green 13?
Green 14, yeah.
14. And
right.
So tell us how that came about. So you had done a marriage, and apparently there'd been an investigation going on at a federal level. And so on what day was the Green 13 initially arrested there?
That was 6 a.m., July 8th, 2010.
So in 2010, they came and destroyed your world along with 12 other people, right? You're outside of you and Cher, there were 12 other people. And tell us how that came about. I know, first of all, that we have been recording past our more time than we need. So we're going to have to edit some of these things out, I believe. But this is a story I really wanted to get to because it's just so incredible that you two were considered a danger to your communities by the United States government to such a degree that you were denied bail. So tell us about that day in July in 2010.
Well, I think it's helpful to know that it didn't come out of the blue. I mean,
Yeah.
I had been operating for just under 10 very happy, very public years. Oceanfront ran for mayor as a cannabis minister. Almost every week, we were on the religion page of the paper, the local paper, on Friday, announcing our services for the coming week with all the other churches.
Yeah.
We had ultimate legitimacy. What's that?
Yeah. Perhaps most significantly, there's this project, Green Harvest, right? That takes
Right.
place in Hawaii, where the federal government gives the local police a large amount of money to search and destroy marijuana and to destroy marijuana growers. And you had opposed that. And then the Big Island, didn't they vote against that in a vote?
Yes. There were two actions that I took. The first one, I actually stopped the DEA funding. I sued in 1999. I just couldn't take it. They weren't hurting me personally. They were just hurting the community and creating massive, outrageous poverty and a crime wave fueled by
in the
methamphetamine.
helicopters over everybody's house and
They
go
would
down
fly.
everybody's neighborhoods like all the time.
And even spray poison from the helicopters on farm animals and organic gardens and catchment roofs. And I mean, it was really a disaster. And most people, by far the majority, were afraid to speak up. But I had the experience in the Army of speaking my truth to power and succeeding. And so I used that experience to do it again. And so I was very often a lone voice, and sometimes people would, well, certainly Dwight Kondo helped, and Aaron Anderson helped, and Jonathan Adler helped. I don't mean I was the only guy, but it was a very lonely time, and to be an activist against the war machine here.
I can relate.
Yeah, yes, you can, I'm sure. So, but I realized there was a way to potentially turn off the funding to the county council for the helicopters. And I created a lawsuit and I paid for it. I got the signatures and I prosecuted the mayor and the majority of the county council here for malfeasance in office. And it was an impeachment lawsuit in 1999. And I miraculously won. And it was just so shocking to do because the most powerful lawmakers on the Big Island, the mayor and the majority of the council, 6 of them, they all had hotshot lawyers. And it turned out a beautiful thing happened. When you sue a local official or a government official in their official capacity, they get free legal defense. But if you impeach them, they have to pay out of their pocket. And I was impeaching them. I didn't know that they would have to pay their own legal bills, but it turned out that really hurt them. They had to pay $10,000 or $15,000 a piece to defend themselves against my lawsuit. And we went to court. I remember it well. It was a packed house, and you could hear a pin drop. And I was prosecuting these, powerful politicians and all their lawyers. And Judge Ricky Mayamano said, Mr. Christie, come up to the podium and tell us why we shouldn't dismiss this case. And I remember traffic court. I didn't really know what to say. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not that skilled at it, but somehow Spirit gave me the words to say. And I asked for a continuance because I knew that in traffic court, which I had been to a couple times, the judge always granted a continuance because they want to keep the wheels of justice moving. So if they have to make the schedules work for everybody, so getting a continuance is almost a guarantee. So somehow that concept popped into my mind, and I asked the judge. I said, "Hey, I'm not a lawyer, and I'd like 90 days to rewrite this lawsuit and add a couple of amendments to it. I request a continuance." Well, the other team jumped out of their chairs. Objection, objection, objection. They wanted the case dismissed right then and there. Well, the judge granted me the continuance. So it was like round one, I won against, the powerful power structure. And the county officials who I was suing went to Lloyd's of London to get impeachment insurance. And Lloyd's apparently laughed at him and said, well, you're already impeached. It's too late. It's like asking for car insurance after you've had, your car got banged. So late. So they were going to have to keep paying out of their pocket for legal defense against me. And I had a very solid case. They could lose their positions and be kicked out of office, the whole majority of them. So instead of facing me in court another time, they sent every dollar of the DEA funding grants to the police back to DEA headquarters, and they canceled the Green Harvest operation at harvest time in the year 2000, which was all of a sudden we had peaceful skies. And I thought, wow, what a great success. Holy moly, David and Goliath thing, and I won, kind of like the Army. And then years later, they came back with more money and more helicopters. And again, they weren't against me because I had my license. They were treating me great, but they were creating such havoc and breaking up families, sending people to prison for decades for cannabis. It was wrong, wrong, wrong. And I thought, instead of suing them annually, which takes some energy and, you get a lot of psychic, most for and against, there are different levels of cost for me to do that. I thought, hey, let me design a county ordinance that will end the funding forever, which I did. And at first I called it the Methamphetamine Eradication Act of 2006. And I did it with a similar content as my 1999 lawsuit. I passed it through the county council and they turned it down. And they said something that was very instructive to me as an activist. They said, Mr. Christie, you're late for 2006, but you're early for 2008. And I thought, I usually don't think that long range as an activist, dealing with things right in front of me. But I thought, wow, I'm early. That means if I would just have some patience, maybe we could pass this through the initiative process. So I rewrote it a little bit. I called it Project Peaceful Sky, because that was the goal. You got to be very careful what you ask for in life. If I had asked for the end of marijuana eradication, that would have grown metaphysically in my mind and my psyche, the damage of prohibition. I wanted to encourage the growth of peace and harmony and prosperity through cannabis. So we named it Project Peaceful Sky. We got a grant from the Marijuana Policy Project. We raised a little money. Share helped. A small team of us helped through the ministry. I hired a spokesperson who was unknown in the community, which was really a smart thing on my part because I generate people for me and against me. I've been very public on this as you know, for decades. And some people like my action and some don't. So I did a smart thing and I hired Adam Atom Lehman to be the spokesperson at the county council for Project Peaceful Sky. And he had no resume really as a in politics here. And he was a lovely guy with good manners. And so, yeah, we won the vote in 2008, and we created a county ordinance 08-181, and it's officially called the lowest law enforcement priority of cannabis ordinance. And it takes away, it makes zero funding for investigating, arresting, or prosecuting anyone for 24 plants or less on the Big Island, a misdemeanor amount. And we won against all odds, really. The county council finally approved it to go on the ballot. They said, you'll never win this, but we want to shut you up once and for all. So put your silly thing on the ballot and see that the people will turn it down, and hopefully you'll forever go away. Well, we won on election day, November 4th, I think it was, 2008.
What percentage vote did you get?
53%.
All right. All right.
Yep.
So it became law in 2009.
Yes, it became law right away, actually.
Oh, right away in November of 2008.
Yeah, and then the police.
So 18 months later, you're a danger to the community that's got to be held in jail without bail.
Denied 8 times as the most dangerous man in Hawaii. No amount of bail would keep the community safe. The judge, multiple judges ruled, multiple judges, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco, even though it was a first-time offense for me and there were no victims.
So let's talk about how they led up to this arrest a little bit. I know we got a lot of, maybe this will turn into 2 shows. We'll see. But let's talk about the investigation and how it came to that in July of 2010, they smashed in your door.
Yeah, they didn't smash in. They were very respectful, which was really, I must say that, because, you hear about all these terrible raids and they shoot the dog and, throw everything upside down. No, they knocked loudly to wake us up and said, hey, Roger, get your clothes on, get out of bed, because we've got arrest warrants for you. And they were very respectful, to be honest with you. What?
7 different agents.
Many different agencies: FBI, DEA, IRS.
You had, for our audience that doesn't know, the largest aircraft in the U.S. is called a C-130, and the military apparently used a C-130 to send all of these federal agents from Oahu there to Hilo. And then they flew after they arrested the 14 of you, they flew all you back to Oahu to go through court. You didn't get to go through court in federal court in Hilo, right?
No, I wish.
Yeah, they didn't want your local community to see you. And for our audience, and as a person who operated in Hawaii, I could tell you that the culture on Oahu is much more conservative than on the Big Island. And there's a lot less activism and a lot more corruption even though there's corruption throughout the islands. It's worst on Oahu, which has 70 or 80% of the people, right?
90% of the population of the states on Oahu. They have 1 million people. We have 200,000 on the Big Island. There is not a federal court here anymore. There used to be, and there could be. They could reopen it. It's at the old post office. But they would have had a very difficult time prosecuting us here, because we had hundreds of people multiple times marching through Hilo with banners and signs and stopping traffic, in our favor. And they had to take us out of the home territory.
Yeah, I was there a couple of times marching through Hilo while you were locked up. In the end, you were locked up for how long? And Cher, you were arrested too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So they flew all of you to Oahu, and then after all the other 13 were let go, but they held Roger.
Right, for 50 months, no bail, no outside, no sunshine. the only visitors were legal. You had to be a lawyer. And yeah, it was held in high security, called the Federal Detention Center.
Which is a box right on the runway at Honolulu International Airport. So
Yes,
every
it is.
time, and with a business in Honolulu, in Hawaii, I would fly into Honolulu and I would go, Roger is over there in that box.
Yeah, it was it was strange doing, because we were looking forward to having a trial because we were legitimate and sincere. And the U.S. attorney told me twice to my face, shaking my hand, that I was good to go. And when Cher and I were new together, I made an appointment with the community police officer in downtown Hilo, William Durr, and said, "Hey, would you please tell my wife to comfort her, so it's not just from me saying that, I'm safe to operate, through the police spokesman, that we're good." And we went there and sat with him at the substation, and he told Cher, that we were an asset to the community.
When
And
was
so
that?
she, probably 2008 or 9.
Yeah, we were back at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, he was very friendly, lovely guy. And we were an asset to town because people could come in. We were a real street ministry, and we had ministry services and cannabis sacraments. And this is where I got to say, I didn't know how far my license would protect me. I knew it was good for me personally, but I wanted it to be kind of like Schindler's List was to the Nazis. If you were on the list, you had something to show the Nazis, so you were safe, or relatively safe, from being arrested. And if you were not on Schindler's List, you were, on your own, and it was trouble. Well, arresting cannabis people here was common, and they really hurt people bad, broke up families, confiscated property, and wealth and assets, and sent people to jail for decades for marijuana. And so I thought, wow, if I put my legitimate license number and my name and my phone number and website on an ID card for people, and I hand them out, will that help, people, give them something to say, some legitimacy to stand on? Because otherwise, you could say George Washington grew it, or Tom, what I mean? The Declaration is written on it, and it goes nowhere. It doesn't protect people at all. But so I started printing up cards like this and just handing them out to people who I would meet who felt sincere. And I started getting testimonials back that they worked and they protected people from being arrested. I went, wow, that is, that's 2 cents worth of ink on 3 cents worth of paper. And I just saved a family or a person from, a tragic situation. That's a powerful piece of paper. So I started spreading the concept of the ministry as far as I could. And, I got to say, it's not just the big bad government that came back and hurt us. I'm into metaphysics and religious science, and I've got to take and communicate responsibility personally. Yes, I took away their money, grounded the helicopters, and then we did that. And that stopped their big corrupt enterprise here of stealing people's cannabis, and God only knows doing what with it. And that, that was a 40-year long program.
Let's just be honest. They sell it to their friends. That's what happens everywhere when they seize our cannabis. Wherever you are in the world, they seize your cannabis and they sell it to their friends. That's what I say.
Yeah, I haven't seen that firsthand. I've heard that secondhand a lot. And
I
so,
have been a witness. And so they always managed here in Portland to come in and arrest people just at harvest. And going in and looking in the evidence locker, the buds would always be gone. And there'd just be some stems with some leaves on them. So I could tell you from my experience, of course, when I raised that in court, everyone was quiet. No one, they acted like I never said that.
right. So, that was a 40-year-long program. There were tons and tons and tons, multi-millions people. Even the government here said it was multi-billion-dollar enterprise annually. Yeah. And we put an end to that. And I'm sure that shocked them. And some of them wanted to, political payback on me. And that's a factor, and that's a real thing. And because I'm into metaphysics and that I'm the God being living in my body, and that I'm kind of the director of the movie of my life, I say that pride went before my fall. And I got cocky, and I felt like I was king of the hill there, and they couldn't touch me. And I got a little cocky, and I have to learn that lesson and take that responsibility and not just blame the cops for coming after us, which of course they did. Anyway, that's one of the big lessons in life. I'm into metaphysics, where I play the responsibility game, and the responsibility game is I'm responsible, and it's the best game I know of to play on planet Earth.
So they arrested you in July of 2010, and after 50 months and 8 rulings that you're a danger to your community, too dangerous to be released on bail. And Cher was being charged as well, along with the other 12 people involved. Tell us how the end game, what's gone on after that, what led to the end of that 50-month incarceration?
Well, we wanted the last marijuana trial, like there was a last witch trial one day. And the pendulum swung too far, and we thought, wow, this is a great gift. How can we turn this bummer into a blessing? I thought, well, if we become the last marijuana trial in federal court, then being arrested is the price to pay, price of admission. And what a great thing to do. What a great service to humanity that we have the last marijuana trial, that at that trial, the religious use, the spiritual use of cannabis would become known far and wide. And we would win in a fair trial. And the word marijuana spelled with an H would be gone in the history books, and the sacramental use of cannabis with a capital C would become front and center. And like the witch trial, they ended the witch hunts, that we would be the last one, and we would be really proud to do that public service. Well, we were denied that public service. We were denied that opportunity to have a fair trial.
You guys didn't have any weapons when you were arrested with this, or any large sums of money that were taken, or they just came and took basically about a pound of marijuana among the 14 of you. It was like they had maybe a pound of marijuana. They flew a C-130, the largest airplane in the government's arsenal, out there with all these federal agents after you guys. And
yeah, it was a great big deal that they worked on for years. This is what's called the deep state. I mean, they're the superpower of the world. They do what the heck they want wherever they want, and we had stopped their corrupt enterprise here, and I think that was the impetus for coming against us. So they said 17,000 wiretaps, put GPS trackers on us, put cameras on the telephone pole outside the ministry and outside our home, and watched us for years, recorded everything. And I thought, well, if I'm legitimate, let them record. It'll just roll off. But they wanted to get us no matter what, then they wouldn't let us present our legitimacy. The judge, even though she ruled that we were sincere and legitimate during the course of hearings, which is a great big thing. I hope others have had that ruling, but I don't know of anybody in federal court that's been ruled a sincere and legitimate cannabis minister other than Cher and I. But immediately after that ruling, she denied us a religious defense. So we were going to head to a trial where you're sworn in to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But I was going to have to say no to that because the judge had denied us our defense. We were denied the right to, present our religious defense to a jury. So our lawyer said, listen, you're not going to a trial, you're going to a firing squad. And once we turned down plea bargains before this time, we were initially facing 120 years theoretically in prison and 3 40-year potential conspiracy charges. Once we turned the 5-year plea bargain down, Sharon and I, and we had asked if we plead guilty, could you let our other co-defendants go? And they turned that down. Then they increased. They did what they call stipulation. They added more felonies to add the pressure on us. And Cher was facing a theoretical 240 years in prison, and me 360 years in prison. And they thought that pressure would force us, because they don't like to do trials anymore. They like to overcharge people and force them into plea bargains. They thought that would kick our ass and make us sweat and take the plea bargain. Well, it's instructive for people to know that that's a term called pressing. And pressing was used during the witch trials, where they would press a rock on somebody's chest on the ground and say, will you confess now? Are you a witch? And if you'd say no, hell no, they would add another stone. And then it would be harder to breathe. Well, do you confess now? No, screw you. Well, add another. There was actually a guy, Giles Corley, was pressed to death in the 1600s in Salem, Massachusetts. And his famous last words were, when they asked him, are you a witch? He said, no. Then they added another stone. They said, what do you say now? And he says, more weight.
All right.
They pressed him to death because they were after his farm, and he knew that. Anyway, we finally took a plea bargain when we realized we were not going to a fair trial. We were guaranteed to be convicted and be sentenced to decades in federal prison. So we took a plea bargain of 5 years for me, and I had almost served that by the time that had happened. And they gave us the right to appeal, which I thought, well, there's an opportunity. Hopefully we'll win on appeal and Cher won't have to go into prison. But
the thing was that
we lost the
I
appeal.
could not see Roger, and because I wasn't married to him, I couldn't get a sense about what to be doing. The only time that I could see him is if we both had attorneys. So we got married in prison.
So we could visit and discuss our defense, because that's one of the reasons, maybe the main reason they wouldn't let me out, because I had a certain ability in legal matters to succeed where others hadn't. And they didn't want me to have the ability to prepare a good defense. So they kept me locked up and without visitors. And, I mean, it was very tense. Cher had to carry the burden of
taking the ministry down.
The ministry.
And plus the government had sent letters out to people saying that they were watching them. So I had nobody that was helping to just take the ministry down and to sell things. And
people that were on my telephone, the ministry telephone that had been recorded, the Department of Justice sent threatening letters. We don't know how many, but many people. And they said, hey, we've got your voice recording and a transcript of you, potentially committing a federal crime. And so then people didn't want to talk, to Cher. And she was,
even people that weren't even into cannabis.
Yeah, it was, it was family members and whatever. It was, they're bad actors. They're bad actors. But anyway, here we are sitting, we're sitting here holding each other's hand, sitting in Hawaii, loving life as much as can. So got to let people know. We said,
you served your 5 years. Once you took the plea bargain, there'd already been 50 months at that point. You were only a few months away from, probably within a month or two, you were in the halfway house there in Honolulu, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But I still hadn't.
Yeah, then I had 4 years of probation, and Cher, because we lost our appeal, the Ninth Circuit Court just went along with the district court's adjudication. then
So
Cher had to go in, and
being
she got
locked.
the maximum sentence.
How long were you in federal custody, Cher?
They said that they would give me in the deal no time to very little, and instead they gave me the highest, which was 27 months. They said I could self-surrender to the West Coast, which they sent me to Phoenix, that's where I self-surrendered to Phoenix. And then because I had a medical marijuana license. They said that I did not qualify for the drug program.
The anti-drug program called the residential drug treatment
It
program.
was 90,000 was what I was told from other prisoners in there that the government would get.
$90,000.
Yeah, for each prisoner that would go through these programs. So because I wasn't doing that, they shackled me, my hands and my feet, and sent about 70 people back to the federal prison where Roger was at because they needed a head count. There's not enough federal prisoners in that building. There's more state prisoners there.
You got put in
May I
this
interrupt
Yeah.
for a second?
with no, you spent 50 months in that box where you couldn't see the daylight or breathe fresh air. How long were you there, Cher?
I think
17 months.
17 months there.
See, they promised her the residential drug treatment program in Arizona. And once you complete that, they take up to a year off your sentence,
9 months.
which is a great incentive when you've got a 2-year plus sentence. So Cher went there. And then when it was time to go to the program, they said, you can't come in because you had medical marijuana. It's like, what the frick?
No,
Anyway, it was a big disappointment. So then she would have to
Sounds
serve
like
the majority of her time.
another level of punishment for being an activist.
Yep. So
And
anyway,
Roger, when did you get off parole?
in November of 2018, 2 years ago, it was probation. Yeah, I served 4 solid years. They denied me early release. I had to serve the 4 solid years. It was November.
More
So,
than,
yeah.
yeah.
Pardon
And
me?
then, so at that point, though, Cher, when did you have to go into federal custody?
2016.
And so they held you
October
for the full 27 months?
24.
Yeah, she got a little bit early out.
Yeah. And then you're still on parole. Is that right? You
Probation.
still have to report to the local federal parole officer.
Correct.
How much longer are you under their control, Cher?
Well, they denied me twice
Early release.
release. So September the 21st, 2021.
So that would be taking the whole. So there's this
Year.
judge in Honolulu, a lady named Leslie Kabashi, who has been
Kobayashi.
said you have no rights. Basically, you're a danger to the community. She ruled against you multiple times, and now she continues to torture. She says you're ineligible for early release from parole here. 10 years. It's 10 years and 6 months that you guys have been tortured. So what was her reasoning that you can't be released from this?
Yeah, the probation office sent a letter to the judge as part of our motion to get Cher released early. And the probation officer said Cher's the best candidate to release early. She hasn't violated anything. She always tests negative when they drug test her. And because of her age and standing in the community, and there were no victims to her crime, no violence, no weapons. And the judge overruled that and literally put in writing just a couple months ago that it was because of Cher's contentious attitude. She literally put that in writing.
Contentious people I can think of. I mean, what is this? Somebody is, in my opinion, and you're not saying this, but my opinion is somebody there on the Big Island is somehow greasing Kiboshi's palm to pressure you for your activism. That's my opinion.
You know, we shut down a big law enforcement action here, and I think we're still getting some political payback for it.
Yeah. Well, we made marijuana legal here, and I'm still getting some payback from those forces too. There are people out there that don't like that, and you know, we won't go into that part. So you have another like 9 or 10 months to go, Cher, and finally you can close this chapter of federal interference in your life, right?
Yes. We've been working on some projects that we'd like to just tell you about.
Please.
So go ahead and talk.
Yeah, we want to use our experience in life and our heart for ministry and for humanity and for the people around us to go back into ministry to one degree or other. Of course, we can't distribute cannabis at this point. I guess we could distribute CBD. We could call it the CBD ministry, right? And help people here.
If it's less than 0.3% THC, it's not it's still cannabis, but it still could be called even marijuana, but it's not illegal. That's the ruling.
So yeah, and that does help a lot of people. So, but what,
having visited Texas, where the laws have been pretty harsh, there are CBD stores selling flowers that look and smell like good flower, but it doesn't have THC. They've genetically modified it, so it only has CBD.
well, that does help some people, and that there's a possibility. But the two things that we're really interested in now, we want to do. I'm licensed to marry people. I got a new license to marry people. The state took my old one away. They made a new rule. I don't know if it was especially for me or just coincidence, but they said that my license for life. They were ending it, and I applied again, not as a cannabis minister. When I applied as a cannabis minister last year, I denied it, and they said because the word cannabis was on it. And so there's a potential lawsuit for me to sue the state because they're denying my religious freedom. And I will get to that at some point in time, which they granted previously.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did get licensed to marry people, and I've done a couple weddings recently, which went very well. So I wanted to do legal weddings, hand fastings, and engagement ceremonies for people going forward. We're starting December 21st is our launch date. That very auspicious astrological time, and the winter solstice is when we're starting. And we're launching also what we call My Exit Plan, which is preparation for people leaving planet Earth, and to die with dignity and to take care of business so you don't leave a mess, so you leave a clean passing, so to speak. Because we've seen contemporaries, family and friends pass away, and they leave a mess for who's behind, and people don't know what to do or don't know how to get in their bank account. We've seen friends that can't visit for COVID in the hospital because they're not legally married. Anyway, so their health and wealth benefits to being lawfully, legally married, which we want to help in that regard.
If our audience wants to reach you, is there a website, or do you want to give out a phone number or anything for people who might want to reach you?
I do. Thank you for asking, Paul. That makes it go exponential. My email is my name, rogerchristie@gmail, ROGERCHRISTIE @gmail.com. And my phone number is in Hawaii time zone, mid-Pacific time zone. We're at 808-464-3966. 808-464-3966. Happy to schedule a wedding, and they can do them even remotely here. I could be standing at a waterfall, beautiful location, and somebody could be in a hotel room in Waikiki. And because of COVID, they've made a new rule. You don't have to physically be together to have a lawful wedding or engagement ceremony.
And then
here.
our websites are.
yeah, and then we're the website for that wedding is freshstartweddingsofhawaii.com. And that'll go live on the 21st. freshstartweddingsofhawaii.com on December 21st going forward. And then someday soon thereafter, we'll have myexitplankit.com for.
And a ministry booklet and other things too we've been working on.
So yeah, we're going to go forward and, use our life force and our energy and our heart for humanity to help out as much as we can going forward. And like I mentioned yesterday, I do want to file a federal injunction one day to win and secure the First Amendment right for we the people to have cannabis as our spiritual and religious sacrament.
And by it is, I mean, the holy anointing oil of Christ in Judaism is cannabis primarily. It was several other things, but it's tied into many different religions, from Chinese ancestor worship and Japanese Shinto. The Egyptian goddess of education and wisdom was always depicted with a big cannabis leaf. So it's tied into many different belief systems.
There are two very cool things that I don't know if you've heard or the audience has heard that have come out recently. One is that cannabis was ruled to be kosher by the Grand Ultra Orthodox Rabbi, number one. And number two, this just came out this year, a couple months ago, that cannabis was burned on the altar.
Yeah.
This is the Biblical Archaeology magazine.
Can't really see that,
and,
but it's the picture.
Have you seen this one?
A little hot box, really. I mean, it's a tiny little area, and they burn cannabis in there, like the Scythians did in their huts. They burn it in the center of their
hut. That's where people went to communicate with God.
Right.
And every hippie knows that cannabis helps them communicate with God. So it's the evidence is there, and prohibition's falling and cannabis is rising. So one of these days we'll win this case, and we'll be free. But in the meantime, we say, God, that's great. Please show us the blessings in this situation and hurry. We are safe, we are loved, and all is well.
Well, I want to thank you, Roger, and you, Cher, for coming on Cannabis Common Sense here. We'll have to have you back again as things keep developing. And I really admire your standing up to these forces. And I'm sorry you've had to go through this ordeal, but we're happy to talk to you today and look forward to talking more in the future.
Thank you. We say we're reporting, not complaining, because we love our life on planet Earth, even with the spankings that we get. And we thank you, Paul. You've been a dear friend and loyal and helpful throughout many decades now. So much love and respect to you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you for Reverend Ray Christo, and with bringing Kevin to Casper to
God only knows the good you've done, Paul.
Done lots of good.
I keep trying. Got more to do, and I know you do too. So
we love it. Thanks for meeting you on the Cannabis Trail.
Yeah.
We'll see you down there a little forward. Thank you.
Right on.
And, restore him. Thank you.